Noor was a young man living in a fantasy world, known for his strength and popularity in town. He worked a manual labor job, and even his boss was impressed by his dedication, never saying a bad word about him. One day, after collecting his daily wage, Noor heard a woman's scream for help coming from a nearby cave. Ignoring his boss's warning about the danger, Noor rushed to the cave. Inside, he found a girl trapped in magical barbed wire while an adventurer's party faced off against a giant demonic bull. Ever since he was a child, Noor had taken care of his mother and their home because his father never returned with the milk. He took it like a champ, managing the household. His mother was sick and mostly bedridden, so Noor made hot soup for her and told her he'd go hunt some rabbits for dinner. His mother cleaned his face and apologized for not being able to give him more, but Noor put on a brave face and assured her he needed nothing more. One night, Noor made a hearty rabbit stew for his mother, but when he returned to feed her, she had passed away. With no family left, Noor buried his mother outside their home. Deciding not to succumb to grief, he started living alone, tending to the garden, catching game, and taking care of the farm animals. He studied in his room after thoroughly cleaning it and trained his body by catching wild fish, carrying heavy load up the mountains, and eating lots of protein. One night, feeling lonely, Noor climbed onto a chair, took out an old dusty storybook, and started reading. The book took him back to a time when his family was whole, and his father would tell him tales of mighty adventurers who fought colossal dragons, learned magic from wizards, lifted curses in haunted forests, and battled armies of elves. These stories always fascinated him, especially his father's words about adventurers' duty to protect the weak and ensure they were never hurt. Inspired, Noor decided to become an adventurer. The next day, after tending to the animals, Noor left his home and headed toward the city to pursue his dream. He camped in a forest at night, and by morning, he arrived at the beautiful city of his kingdom. Entering through the giant main gate, Noor was amazed by the bustling markets, where people bought swords and fruits in the same place. He spotted a man with a sword and decided to follow him, leading him to the Adventurers Guild. Inside, Noor was surprised to find a big burly man at the reception instead of a thick furry girl. Disappointed, he told the man he wanted to be an adventurer. The man brushed him off, saying this wasn't a place for kids, and asked about his parents. Noor replied that his parents were dead, which caught the man's attention. The man advised Noor to first go to a training school, where he would need to pick a class and skills before he could become an adventurer. Excited, Noor headed to a school, aiming to become the strongest swordsman. He enrolled and started training in swordsmanship, but even after several weeks, while other students awakened their magical potential, Noor still showed no magical abilities. Months passed, and the instructor told him he didn't have the talent and was wasting his time. The instructor suggested Noor join a different school since he wasn't fit to be a swordsman. Determined, Noor found another school and decided to train as a warrior. He trained under a big, red-headed instructor, but after intense training, the redhead told him he had no talent for it, all he had learned was how to parry attacks. Noor tried several other schools, first as a hunter but got kicked out, then as a thief but was rejected due to a lack of talent, and even attempted to become a magician but failed. He finally tried to become a healer but failed at that too. Disappointed, he returned to the city. The burly man at the guild was shocked to learn that Noor hadn't learned a single thing despite spending months at every school. The man told Noor that to become an adventurer, even at the lowest rank, E rank, one needed at least one skill, which Noor lacked. Feeling defeated, Noor left the city and returned to his cottage in the woods. But he refused to give up. He created his own training setup and decided to perfect the one move he had learned, parrying and deflecting attacks. Noor trained rigorously, perfecting his parry technique day and night. After a year, he could parry 10 attacks at once. He continued training for 3 more years, eventually parrying 100 swords at once, but still, he gained no new skills. Undeterred, he kept training, even breaking 14 swords in the process. 14 years passed, and Noor realized he had trained every single day, now able to parry 1,000 swords at once without fail. Despite all his hard work, he still hadn't gained any new skills, but he decided to return to the Adventurers Guild once more. This time, he met a young girl who reviewed his skills and advised him to visit the training school again. Noor explained he had already been through them all, surprising the girl. She told him he lacked the skills to become an adventurer. Feeling disheartened, Noor was about to leave when the burly man recognized him. They sat down for a chat over some beer, and Noor shared his years of training. The man explained that adventurers have ranks from E to S, but even to become an E-rank adventurer, one needed at least one skill, which Noor didn't have. However, the burly man mentioned a lesser-known rank below E, F rank. F rank adventurers had limitations, like not being able to take on kill quests or work in forests outside the city. They could only take odd manual labor jobs within the city, a gig so unglamorous even a troll wouldn't take it. To the man's surprise, Nor immediately accepted and finally got his adventurer's license. Nor started doing odd jobs around the city, like carrying heavy loads and finding lost cats. He also took up nursing jobs, caring for elderly people and cooking for them. Despite all this, he continued training every night and found happiness in helping others as an adventurer. Now back to the present, Nor witnessed the giant bull attack the adventurers, killing the leader effortlessly. Nor quickly checked the leader, finding him dead. The bull continued its rampage, killing everyone in the area before turning its attention to the white-haired girl. Nor's instincts kicked in, and he threw a rock to distract the bull, leading it away. Realizing he couldn't outrun the monster, Nor turned around and parried the bull's attack. To his surprise, the parry was so strong it blasted the bull into the wall. The bull quickly recovered and lunged at Nor again, but Nor continued to parry its attacks. He knew that if he missed a single parry, he was done for. As his sword started chipping, the bull turned toward the girl and rushed at her. Nor used his feather step ability to speed up and deflect the attack, breaking his sword in the process. He remembered his father's words about adventurers defending the weak, even at the cost of their own lives. Standing his ground with a broken sword, Nor parried the monster's attack with all his might, deflecting the axe so forcefully that it bounced back and chopped the bull's head clean off. The girl was shocked as blood splattered everywhere, and the magical barbed wire disappeared from her body. Nor fell to the ground, looking at his shattered sword and realizing how close he had come to death. The girl thanked him for saving her life and asked his name, but Nor replied that his name wasn't worth remembering. He walked away, reflecting on how he almost got killed by a giant cow. Nor realized that he needed to train even more if he wanted to truly become an adventurer who could protect people. After he left, the dungeon filled with guards of the white-haired woman, who turned out to be Lynn Clay, a member of a noble family. Her personal guard arrived and found the dead Minotaur being examined by scientists, while Clay's guards lay dead, covered by white clothes. She apologized for not being there to protect them, but Lynn reassured her by saying it wasn't her fault. A little while later, a man named Dar arrived and asked if she was alright and what had happened. The news of the attack reached her brother Rain, who was shocked to learn that his sister had been attacked by such a monster. He asked Dar how a Minotaur ended up on the surface, as they usually stayed deep within dungeons. Dar bowed and explained that it was likely an assassination attempt. The ring Lin recently bought from a merchant had been tested by a magician and found to contain a mana stone with 90% purity. He believed the stone was cursed by the enemy kingdom of Deridas, known for practicing dark magic. Rain agreed, noting that Deridas's army had been causing trouble on the outskirts, and this brazen attack suggested they wanted war. Rain then asked Dar about the man who saved Lin's life. Dar replied that they knew nothing about him, only that he killed the Minotaur with a broadsword in a matter of minutes and left without giving his name. The next morning, Nor went to the guild as if nothing had happened, and the fatty quickly approached him, asking if he was okay. Nor seemed puzzled, so the fatty explained that a deadly monster had emerged in the caves near his construction site, and he was worried. Nor had no idea that the fatty was talking about the Minotaur he had killed, thinking it was just a low-level cow monster. The fatty told Nor he was lucky to have left beforehand because even a former A-ranked adventurer couldn't have handled such a strong beast. Nor wiped the dirt from his face, wondering what kind of monster could scare an A-ranked adventurer, and then thanked the gods he only faced a giant cow. Nor asked what happened to the monster, and the fatty said a mystery man had killed it with a single blow, shocking Nor, who wondered how strong that man must be. Later, the fatty paid him for the day and advised him to get a real job to earn more. Before Nor could respond, a hooded figure appeared behind him, calling out his name. He turned to find the white-haired girl he had saved the day before. She apologized for following him, explaining she used her long-distance detection skill to find him. When Nor asked if she learned it from the thief schools, she said she was from the magician branch but had skills in all 6 branches. Lin noticed they were drawing too much attention and asked if they could talk somewhere more private. Before Nor could answer, the fatty grabbed him, asking what he had done wrong. Nor insisted he did nothing wrong, while Lin deployed a soundproof barrier and asked him to come with her. They exited the building and walked through the streets to a desolate area. She thanked him for saving her life and those of many others. Nor, still unaware of his own strength, insisted he might have ruined her plans by interfering. She assured him that wasn't true and said she would have probably died without his help. Lin wanted to reward him, but Nor declined, saying her gratitude was enough. She insisted, offering her father's thanks and even land, but Nor kept refusing, baffling Lin, who couldn't understand why he would reject a noble's reward. She felt obligated to repay him and insisted she wouldn't leave until he accepted something. This reminded Nor of a time he did the same to one of the healing school instructors. He finally agreed to meet her father but refused any extravagant rewards, which made Lin happy. She used magic to conceal them as they walked back to her mansion. Upon arrival, Noor was stunned by the grandeur of the place. They walked past the guards and into the mansion, where they met Lin's personal guard, Ines, who looked suspiciously at Noor. Lin introduced Noor as the man who saved her life, and Ines softened, offering to take them to the Lord. As they walked through the gallery, Noor spotted a man in yellow armor, Gilbert, who pointed a lance at him, asking who he was. Ines told Gilbert to back off, explaining Noor was Lin's guest, but Gilbert mocked Noor for looking poor. Ines introduced Gilbert and asked him to join them, as she still didn't fully trust Noor. They waited outside the hall while Lin's father, Lord Clay, discussed the growing threat of war with his son, Ray. They remembered the last time they met the king of Deridas, who had insulted them and threatened war if they didn't grant access to all the dungeons in their kingdom. The door opened, and they entered the hall. Ines and Gilbert knelt before the Lord, but Noor, unfamiliar with noble etiquette, simply walked forward with Lin. She introduced him as the man who saved her life, and the Lord immediately stood up, thanking Noor for saving his daughter. Noor admitted he didn't know how to properly interact with nobles, but the Lord didn't mind, laughing and shaking his hand. The Lord offered Noor any reward he wanted, including land or half the treasure from the kingdom's oldest dungeons, which Ray advised against, as it was worth more than a small country's GDP. Noor refused, insisting he wanted nothing. The Lord was confused by Noor's refusal but eventually offered him a giant black sword, his former personal weapon. Ray was concerned, but the Lord assured him it should be used in battle, not kept as a decoration. Noor accepted the sword, feeling its weight and deciding to take it just to end the conversation and get back to work. The Lord asked him to swing the sword, and Noor did so with one hand, creating a powerful wind blast. The Lord was amazed, as Noor had swung a two-handed great sword with one hand. The Lord suggested Noor train Lin, as times were getting dangerous, which made Lin smile. However, Noor declined, saying there was nothing he could teach her, and prepared to leave. As they walked through the gallery, Noor looked at the sword again, thinking it was perfect for scooping dirt from the drainage ditch. Just as he was about to leave, Gilbert stopped him, pointing a lance at his face, wanting to test if Noor was worthy of the sword. Noor sighed, wondering if he would ever be able to go back home. Gilbert leads Noor through a hallway, and Noor wonders where he's being taken because he just wants to go back home. To his surprise, Gilbert brings him to a training arena for a mock duel. Noor is shocked because he hasn't sparred hard with anyone since his training school days. Gilbert picks up a wooden pole for practice and reveals that he's quite famous in the capital. He then asks Noor to choose his weapon as well. Noor thinks this is an excellent chance to learn from a veteran, so he chooses a regular wooden sword. He doesn't think he'll be much of an opponent to Gilbert, but he's still planning to give it his all. Gilbert attacks first, thrusting his staff at Noor, who easily dodges his attacks. Noor can see how effortless and efficient Gilbert's moves are, revealing how much he has trained. But for some reason, Gilbert appears to be moving very slowly to Noor. Noor believes that Gilbert is just holding back his strength out of consideration for a noob like him. Noor calls a timeout and tells Gilbert that he doesn't need to hold back to such an extent. So, Gilbert decides to get serious. He launches his attacks at a much higher intensity this time, but it still isn't fast enough to overwhelm Noor, who finds openings in Gilbert's defense every time he misses an attack. On the other hand, Gilbert is frustrated that his strikes are not connecting with Noor, so he decides to use a trick attack where he changes his trajectory at the last moment. This forces Noor to jump, and then Gilbert uses it as a chance to strike him down just as he lands. However, despite all that, Noor is able to dodge his attack and asks Gilbert to increase the pace even more because he's comfortable with the current intensity. Gilbert was already using his full abilities, so hearing those words hurts his ego. Noor also finally realizes that he might actually be stronger than Gilbert. But then, suddenly, the elite guard uses his special move on Noor. The attack reaches dangerously close, but when the dust settles, Noor is not in front of Gilbert. He had dodged the attack and moved to the side. After seeing the destructive power of Gilbert's attack, Noor immediately declares that he no longer wishes to fight. Noor leaves the palace, but his skill has caused an uproar among other knights, who can't believe that he could dodge their captain's special attack. Some of them believe that Noor only survived because Gilbert was holding a practice spear, otherwise, a genius like him could easily defeat anyone he wanted to. Hearing those words takes the depressed Gilbert down memory lane. He was always talented with a spear and traveled all around the kingdom seeking powerful people and defeating them. There was no one who could even give him a proper challenge, and Gilbert got bored. He went to the capital and joined the knights so that he could fight monsters, since they were stronger than humans. However, even monsters were no match for his strength and skill, and his boredom persisted. Then one day, as he was lazing around, the master of the sword school came to see him because he was the one who trained him in the early days. Gilbert ranted about how boring it is to be so strong and wished there were more people as strong as the master so that he could have fun fighting them. The master only told him that someday someone who will surpass him will emerge among his students, and Gilbert hoped that the person makes his appearance while he is still alive, because that may be the only way to relieve his boredom. Now, as Gilbert thinks about the man who killed a minotaur with a single strike, his mind is full of conflicting thoughts. He knew from the first moment that Nor was an interesting person, but he couldn't sense anything remarkable about his strength. However, when they sparred, he found that Nor was much stronger than he looked. When Nor told him to go even faster, he used his special attack on him that was even faster than the speed of sound, knowing full well that no human can survive it. When Nor dodged the attack, Gilbert felt defeated. To top that off, Nor ended the fight. Gilbert believes that Nor did so to not embarrass him in front of his troops, and before going, he told him that he was looking forward to their next meeting, which was Nor's way of telling him to get stronger. Now Gilbert thinks that he has finally found someone who can make his life a bit more fun. On the other hand, Nor has no idea how highly Gilbert rates him. He used his body strengthening and feather step skills earlier to evade Gilbert's ultimate attack at the last moment, and if he was only 1 moment late, he would have died. Nor thinks Gilbert adjusted the speed of his attack on purpose so that he could only barely dodge it, and he is grateful to him for showing him that he still needs a lot of training. The next day, Nor begins cleaning drains using the treasured sword he received from the king, and he is absolutely stunned by how well the sword performs. Later, he is sitting in the forest because his job at the construction site was suspended because of the Minotaur incident. He wonders how he can kill time until the job is available again, and he also wants to put the huge sword to good use. He thinks that it may make a splendid or a pizza shovel or even a grill plate, but he lacks the resources to get other items needed to start those businesses. He tries using his fire magic and thinks that it is too weak to be any good for starting a barbecue. He hears footsteps behind him and turns around to find Lin, who has come looking for him specifically. Nor asks how he can help her, and Lin requests him to let her be his apprentice so that she can learn from him while serving him. She is eager to serve him with anything he wants, but Nor refuses, saying that he cannot teach her anything and he is self-sufficient in everything. Lin tries offering him a monetary reward for his training, but Nor clearly tells her that he wants nothing. She keeps insisting that she will be helpful to him, and Nor fails to clearly get his point through to her. To prove that she is qualified to learn from him, Lin decides to show off her magic power. She creates icicle lances and shoots them towards herself and then burns them off using a powerful fire spell. Next, she cuts down a huge tree with a small dagger using another skill and then uses a magic sword skill to blast a tree behind Nor. She is confident that Nor will accept her as his apprentice with this display, but he still refuses to do so. Nor has now realized that Lin is rating him too high and wonders how he can convince her that he is nothing compared to her. He decides to show her his skill and creates a tiny fireball to prove to her that he is a loser. Lin is shocked to see it. She begins walking home and thinks about the tale of the talentless boy that all the teachers used to narrate. At that time, Lin thought it was just a cautionary tale because she didn't think that any 12-year-old boy could endure the harsh training of all 6 schools for the full term when even seasoned warriors found it hard to stay there for so long. One day, the strongest magician who runs the magic school showed her his tiny fire skill and then increased its size to show off his mastery. The magician said that it takes decades of practice to increase the size of the tiny flame skill. That is why when Nor showed Lin his tiny fire today, she was left speechless because it was much larger than the strongest magician in the world. He told her that this is all he can manage and his skill in other branches is at the same level as well. Only Lin knew that the size of the small fire spoke volumes about Nor's ability, and she concluded that he was a peerless master in the other branches as well. Now she is ashamed that she was proud of her high-level skills that she just learned recently. She thinks that despite being exponentially stronger than her, Nor never boasts about his power and he does even the most mundane tasks to help others. She thinks that Nor's mind and character are as strong as his body and that he cannot be fazed by anything. As the princess, she will have to lead the kingdom alongside her brother one day, and for that, she needs to be strong. She wants to learn how to become strong from Nor, and for that reason, she once again reaches out to him just as he is coming out of a restaurant after having dinner. Lin tells him that she fully understands how immature and vain she was and now she wants to learn from him even more. She believes that his strength will become the foundation of their kingdom's peace and prosperity, so she has accepted him as her master. However, Nor is deeply troubled by this and just wants to go home. Meanwhile, Lin's older brother, Rain, is in his office, scratching his head and wondering why their dad gave the legendary black sword to a total stranger. He remembers the epic adventure his father had when he was younger, exploring a dungeon with the masters of the 6 job schools. After a long and grueling journey, he found the black blade, which quickly became their most prized possession. The sword was made of a mysterious metal tougher than anything else they knew, it was practically indestructible. Neither physical attacks nor magic could scratch it. However, everyone was puzzled as to why such a powerful sword was in terrible condition. Rain thinks that the black blade is worth more than any treasure they have. It's not something his father would just hand over to a random person unless he saw something special in him. Rain knows his dad can sense the looming dangers facing their kingdom, and maybe he gave the sword to Nor, hoping he'd be their ace in the hole when the time came. Even Rain believes Nor isn't just an ordinary guy and could be their secret weapon. Meanwhile, Nor is in the city, munching on delicious street food with Lin by his side. She's fully embraced her role as his apprentice, but Nor feels he's not worthy of being her teacher. He figures that if they head to the guild, she'll see how pathetic he is and maybe leave him alone. When they reach the guild, the chubby receptionist immediately asks Nor why he's hanging out with a princess. Nor says it's complicated, so the receptionist decides not to talk about that, even though Nor really wants some advice from him. The receptionist then asks what they wanted. Nor says they need a commission for 2 people since Lin is a B-rank adventurer. Fatty suggests they hunt goblins outside the city. Nor is stunned because he's only heard stories about real adventurers using goblins as practice dummies. He can't believe he's finally getting the chance to do the same. But then, he realizes he's relying on Lin's high rank, even though he just wanted her to leave him alone. Lin catches him staring at her, and Nor feels guilty, thinking she sees how greedy and shameless he is. She asks if anything's wrong, and he asks if she's okay with the arrangement since he's relying on her rank. Lin says it's fine and tells Nor he can use anything that belongs to her. Nor feels a bit pathetic but doesn't care because he's finally living his dream. Nor marches out of the guild with determination, but Fatty calls him back because he doesn't even know where the goblins are. Fatty completes the paperwork and warns Nor not to push his luck. Even though goblins are low-level monsters, they can still be dangerous. He points out their location on a map and mentions that their numbers have been dwindling lately. He tells Nor not to forget to collect the right ears of the goblins he kills in order to receive a reward and sends him off. Nor and Lin enter the forest of monsters, and Nor is surprised because he's never seen this part of the forest before. He tells Lin about the different trees in the south where he comes from, and she gives him a quick lesson on the ecosystem. Nor then asks about goblins, and Lin explains that they are small monsters that prey on fruits and small creatures. Their numbers can grow rapidly, and if they exceed a certain limit, they start attacking human settlements due to a lack of food. That's why the Adventurer Guild sends people to keep their numbers low but doesn't allow them to wipe out goblins completely, as they play a role in the ecosystem too. Nor is impressed by Lin's knowledge and feels like he has even less to teach her. As they venture deeper into the forest, Lin's detection skills don't find any trace of goblins. However, she senses something at a distance and tells Nor they should check it out. The deeper they go, the darker it becomes, and the mist thickens. When they reach the spot Lin sensed, they find nothing. She notes that the presence she felt just vanished, but Nor notices something unusual. A half-eaten goblin body floating in the air suddenly falls to the ground. Lin casts a spell, revealing a huge green monster with a red crystal on its forehead. Nor is shocked and jokingly asks if it's the Hulk's cousin, while Lin stutters and tries to say it's a goblin emperor. Nor freaks out, thinking this is the normal size of a goblin and real adventurers must be insanely tough to use them as practice targets. The Goblin Emperor starts uprooting trees with its bare hands and roars, terrifying Lin. She knows even a Goblin King is a Calamity-class monster, and this Goblin Emperor is even stronger. She also knows that Goblin Emperors aren't natural monsters but are created through forbidden experiments. Nor, misunderstanding her fear, thinks she must never have fought monsters before and assures her that their opponent is just a goblin. His words give Lin courage, making her think Nor knew about this powerful monster being here and that's why he was so excited to come. She takes her stance beside him, ready to defeat the Goblin Emperor with her teacher. The Goblin Emperor charges at them, wielding tree trunks like weapons. Nor blocks and parries the attacks but is soon overwhelmed by the brute force. Lin tries to hit it with wind and ice magic, but the Goblin Emperor is surprisingly agile and dodges her spells. It throws a tree at Lin, but Nor parries it and asks if she's okay. She tells him to focus on the goblin, which keeps throwing trees. Nor continues to parry them, but he's getting tired. Lin notices that the Goblin Emperor's injuries are healing unnaturally fast and believes the red crystal on its forehead is the reason. Suddenly, the Goblin Emperor throws 3 trees at once. Nor panics, knowing he can't parry them all, but Lin saves the day with a powerful wind spell that blows the trees away. Her attack damages the Goblin Emperor, but it heals instantly. Lin realizes they need to remove the crystal to stop its healing. Nor doubts they can manage that, but then he gets an idea. He asks Lin to hit his back with the wind spell she just used. She warns him it's strong enough to tear down castle walls, but Nor plans to use the black blade to take the blow and propel himself towards the Goblin Emperor faster than it can react. Lin reluctantly agrees and blasts Nor's back, sending him speeding forward. Despite using his physical enhancement skill, he breaks a bone but quickly heals himself. He dodges a tree thrown by the Goblin Emperor and leaps high, aiming for the crystal. His powerful strike cuts through the tree and hits the crystal, popping it out of the goblin's forehead. The goblin screeches in pain as Nor is sent rolling on the ground. He gets up and sees the goblin writhing in agony. Lin retrieves the crystal and Nor asks if she can finish off the goblin. She agrees, and Nor, feeling bad for the suffering creature, asks her to make it quick and painless. Ironically, she proceeds to burn the Goblin Emperor to death. Nor feels sorry for the monster and decides he's had enough goblin hunting for a while. He thinks he's still too weak to face even low-level monsters and needs to train harder before returning to the forest. Later, Rain's secret agents bring the crystal to him and report the Goblin Emperor incident. Just by looking at the crystal's purity and size, Rain knows it's the work of the Magic Empire. He also learns that Lin and Nor defeated the powerful monster with just a few scratches. However, he's most shocked by how such a huge monster could enter their kingdom without the guards and Secret Service noticing. He orders his agents to keep an eye out for such irregularities in nearby cities and dismisses them. Meanwhile, Nor and Lin report to Fatty at the guild. Fatty asks Nor how he feels after his first monster hunt. Still convinced he just fought a regular goblin, Nor says it was harder than expected and they only won thanks to Lin. Lin blushes at his modesty, and Fatty assumes Nor watched from behind while the princess fought. He gets suspicious when he hears about the red crystal and asks if it was really a goblin. Nor looks to Lin for confirmation, and she, playing along, says that since her teacher called it a goblin, that's what it was. Fatty, satisfied with the explanation, asks them for proof of their kill. Nor and Lin suddenly realize they forgot to collect the goblin's ear before burning it to ashes. Not long after, Rain starts getting reports of strange things happening in nearby cities and villages. People are hearing odd noises at night, animals are spooked and rushing back from the forest, and there's been a rise in missing pets. It seems like the forests have gone eerily quiet. Rain suspects this could mean unnatural monsters have sneaked into their kingdom. He quickly orders his men to send search parties to these areas and have everyone with detection spells on alert. He also calls for the 6 masters of each school for potential backup. Once his subordinates leave, Rain vents his frustration, throwing papers into the air and wondering if the Magic Empire is so desperate for their dungeons that they're willing to go to these lengths. Meanwhile, Nor and Lin are enjoying some street food with the money they earned. Fatty had given them the reward out of his own pocket since it was Nor's first conquest mission, despite them lacking proof of the kill. After they finish eating, Lin tells Nor she's heading home, and he feels relieved to finally get some peace. Just then, Rain arrives, looking for his sister. He asks Nor to visit a mountain town the next morning, promising a good payment and saying Lin will also be there. Although Rain doesn't disclose the exact purpose, Nor accepts, sensing Rain's sincerity. The next day, Nor rides a carriage for the first time, and he's thrilled by the experience. Lin, on the other hand, seems gloomy. Nor, distracted by the beautiful scenery, asks if she's not enjoying the view. As they ride, he daydreams about becoming a proper adventurer and traveling. Lin suddenly apologizes for her brother involving Nor, but he reassures her, saying he's getting paid, which only dampens her mood further. Earlier that morning, Rain had explained their mission: go to the town of Tauros and, if nothing happens, continue to the neighboring country, the Holy Kingdom of Mythira. He told Nor to consider it a paid vacation if all stayed calm. Lin, thinking back, hopes nothing bad happens. Her bodyguard, Ines, tries to comfort her, saying she's there to protect her. In truth, Rain had given Ines a top-secret mission: if the kingdom fell into danger, she was to take Lin and seek refuge in Mythira. Ines was shocked and asked if Lin knew about this. Rain admitted he hadn't told her, fearing she'd oppose the plan. He was deeply worried about Lin's safety and trusted only Ines with this. As they take a break, Ines apologizes to Nor for dragging him into this. She assures him of his safety, but he jokes about being good at running away. Ines insists there's no need for that, showing her ability to create a holy shield. Nor is impressed, recalling how Lin mentioned Ines's skills rival those of Gilbert, a warrior known for defeating dragons. Nor feels inadequate, struggling with just a goblin, but he praises Ines's talent, which brings back memories for her. Ines grew up in an orphanage and discovered her powers when she accidentally cut a friend's finger with them. The caretakers called in experts, who declared her abilities a divine gift, capable of cutting or shielding anything. The redhead warrior, who became her master and adoptive father, trained her. Despite this, Ines distanced herself from the other children, fearing she might hurt them. But meeting Noor, whose name she had heard from her father, made her curious and a little jealous, as her father admired him. Since then, her jealousy had grown, and she struggled to overcome it, wanting to protect Lin without any weakness. Suddenly, Noor spots something moving through the wheat fields, leaving a strange trail. Lin quickly stops the carriage and uses her magic to reveal a giant frog-bat hybrid monster. At the same time, numerous monsters attack the capital. Rain orders warriors, swordsmen, and hunters to defend, while thieves help evacuate civilians. King Clay recalls a warning from Emperor Daridas, who had threatened consequences if they didn't accept his conditions. Rain suspects Daridas is behind the attack and fears worse might come. The 6 masters are spread thin, battling monsters across the kingdom. The redhead warrior faces 3 goblin emperors in the forest, the swordmaster hunts lizard monsters in the city, and other experts are also engaged. Back in the fields, as Lin reveals the monster, it attacks a girl standing nearby. Noor rushes to protect her, parrying the dragon strikes with his black blade. Ines remarks that the girl appeared just as Lin broke the concealment spell around the dragon, leading Lin to suspect the girl is a demon with the power to control monsters. Lin remembers her brother's tales about demons who look like humans but are closer to monsters in nature. These demons, descendants of a race that once destroyed a kingdom, might still hold grudges against humans. Ines believes the girl is a demon who brought the dragon. Lin's spell must have startled her, weakening her control over the dragon, which then attacked her. Ines thinks they shouldn't help the girl, but Noor instinctively rushes to her aid. Watching him fight the dragon, Ines wonders what he's thinking. Lin insists they help Noor, but Ines blocks her, saying it's too late. Noor notices the dragon is slower and weaker than the goblin he fought. He tries to buy time, hoping Lin will step in. The dragon suddenly breathes poison, and Noor decides to parry it to protect the girl, a mistake that exposes him to the deadly toxin. He starts vomiting black blood and bleeding from his eyes, realizing the poison is taking effect. He falls, losing consciousness. As Lin tries to reach him, Ines stops her with a barrier, warning her that the dragon is too dangerous. She combines her shields to protect Lin, urging her to prioritize survival. Lin attempts to use purification magic to save Noor, but it's not strong enough. As the poison spreads, Ines apologizes to Noor for not being able to save him. Just then, the dragon's claw hits the barrier, and the poison cloud disperses. Noor is still fighting the dragon, despite the severe poisoning. Ines realizes why the redhead warrior trusted Noor in difficult situations. He's the ultimate shield, willing to protect others at any cost. However, she fears he won't survive. Noor continues to parry the dragon's attacks, even as he weakens. He puts up a brave fight, blocking an attack before collapsing. Looking at his poisoned blood-stained hand, he thinks he'll somehow manage to pull through this time.
His life starts flashing before his eyes, like a bad movie marathon, as Noor remembers his youth. Back then, after failing to get into any adventuring schools, he returned home, feeling like a hole in his heart. He started practicing and living on his own. One morning, just like every other, Noor went into the forest to forage for food and veggies. To his surprise, Noor found a huge haul and came back home, excited. He began preparing his meal, only to realize he had 2 mysterious plants he didn't recognize. Deciding to toss them into the stew, Noor figured at worst he'd get a stomach ache, but he'd be fine after. Boy, was he wrong. After tasting the stew, his body collapsed like a poorly built house of cards. He started puking blood, wondering what in the world happened. Under the dim moonlight, Noor cast a low-level healing spell he learned from the healer and crawled out of the house. By morning, he somehow survived the night by constantly using healing magic and struggled back inside. He searched for books on common poisonous plants and immediately found one called Dragon's Fire. Realizing it was one of the deadliest plants in the forest, which his mother had warned him about, he decided to continue his training despite his condition. Heading back into the forest with his sword, Noor practiced parrying but collapsed again due to his weakened state. He healed himself once more and took some rest. When he woke up, he felt perfectly fine and healthy. He ventured back into the forest to find some healthy food and spotted the Dragon's Fire plant again, making sure not to repeat his mistake. But alas, a cheeky snake bit him on the butt, poisoning his entire body. He collapsed, unconscious once more. Surprisingly, Noor woke up after a few minutes, feeling completely fine, and found the snake was dead. Noor carried the dead snake home and decided to taste it. The next morning, he intentionally got bitten by the same snake and found it hurt less and didn't make him sick. Nor realized he was growing immune to the poison. This made him quite happy, hoping that with continued training, he might unlock a new skill. From that day on, he started eating anything poisonous he could find and even gobbled down an entire dragon's fire plant. Sometimes he collapsed or puked blood, but Nor always managed to survive. Even though he never unlocked a new skill, he started to enjoy the taste of these poisonous things. Back in the present, Nor gets up, surprising everyone. In his mind, he's only thinking about how tasty this toad could be if he grilled it properly. He shakes off his sickness, and his body soon nullifies the poison inside him. The healing spell he cast on the little boy saved him from the toxic fumes. The dragon is shocked to see the man still breathing and tries to claw him to death. But Nor isn't one to lose easily and keeps parrying the monster until even the claws on its other hand break. The boy looks at him in amazement, wondering how a mere human can fight such a deadly monster without even blinking an eye. Nor, however, doesn't realize this monster is actually a dragon and thinks it's just a really big toad from outside the jungle. The dragon decides to go all out for one final attack, taking a deep breath to shoot as much poison as possible. But Nor times his attack perfectly and hits the dragon in the face just as it was about to attack. This causes the dragon's attack to backfire, its body bloats, and it explodes into 1,000 pieces while everyone watches in amazement. Nor immediately turns to face the little boy, who stands nervously, expecting Nor to kill him as well. Instead, Nor simply asks if he is okay. The boy is surprised by this question, and Nor asks why he was so close to the toad. The boy explains he was taking it to the middle of the city. Nor, thinking the boy is a farmer who must have raised the toad on a happy little farm and was taking it to sell to restaurants, feels guilty. He bows and apologizes for killing the toad, promising to repay him, but it will take some time to gather the money. The boy, still confused, says he doesn't want any money and is thankful that Nor killed the dragon. Nor asks how the boy was able to move with the giant toad, as it didn't hurt him before. The boy nervously looks down and admits he can control monsters. Nor is amazed, wondering how this little boy can control such a powerful beast. The boy reveals he was born with these powers, which surprises Nor. He thinks the child must be gifted by the gods themselves. The boy stammers but admits he belongs to a clan called the Demon Folk. Nor, still clueless about the discrimination against demon folk, says he wishes he were one. It would make it easier to have animals help in the fields, send messages by birds, and avoid attacks from dogs and wolves at night. The boy is utterly confused and asks Nor if he doesn't hate demon folk. Nor, puzzled, asks why he should hate them. The boy explains that every human hates demon folk because they fear their powers. Nor thinks about it and tells the boy that those humans are foolish, as these powers seem incredibly useful. If he had the choice, he would definitely want them. This touches the boy, who starts to tear up, as it's the first time a human has treated him like a person and not a second-class creature. The boy asks if he can be useful to people too, which confuses Nor. He wonders why the boy, who is more skilled and gifted than himself, thinks so little of his abilities. Nor puts a hand on the boy's head and reassures him that he can definitely be very useful. Suddenly, Ines and Lin run up to Nor, asking if he's okay. Nor replies that he's resistant to small amounts of poison, shocking Lin, as the dragon's poison breath is the strongest poison in the world. She realizes that surviving this would only be possible if one had practiced a single skill to the point of becoming a saint. But that's impossible, as even the instructor of the healing school had to practice for 40 years to achieve that power. Suddenly, she notices the demon boy and realizes he is indeed a demon. She asks Nor what he plans to do with the child. Nor says he wanted the boy to come with them since he disrupted the boy's toad delivery to the city. Ines realizes that the demon was taking the dragon to the city to cause destruction and sharply asks who ordered him to do that. The boy replies he doesn't know the man. Ines realizes the boy is just a slave, forced into being a child soldier. She asks if he knows where he came from, but the boy replies he was blindfolded and has no idea. Nor looks at Lin and asks her to take the boy to the nearby city. Lin agrees but warns that demon folk are not allowed in the kingdom of Mythira, and they'll likely be attacked if the demon child is with them. Lin wonders if they can find a way to take the boy with them when suddenly a man appears behind them with a bunch of weapons, smiling and asking how they survived the dragon. Nor wonders who this man might be. The man, a low-budget Gojo Satoru, asks how the dragon died. Nor thinks this might be the man the toad was being delivered to and apologizes, claiming it was his fault the delivery was ruined and he'll try to make it up. The man looks amused and asks why Noor is apologizing, saying he doesn't care about the dragon. He's here for the demon boy. Noor misunderstands, thinking this man might be Rollo's guardian or something, and asks if he's here to take the boy back to his hometown. The man smirks, saying he would get a lot of money for the demon boy. Noor still doesn't understand when suddenly the knockoff Gojo lunges at the boy with his weapon ready. Noor manages to block and parry the attack just in time while Ines grabs Lin and jumps back to safety, asking why he's defending the demon. Noor claims Rollo is his friend, but Gojo says he doesn't care and just wants to deliver the boy's corpse to a noble for a lot of money. With that, Gojo attacks again. Noor starts to block every strike coming his way, all while telling the blindfolded man to back off, as he won't allow him to hurt Rollo. Discount Gojo doesn't seem to mind this challenge. He backs off and suddenly appears above, but Noor parries his attack once again, breaking his enemy's weapon completely this time. Ines instructs Lin to stay behind her at all times, as the man in front of them is highly dangerous. Gojo throws his broken weapon aside, pulls out 2 daggers from his sheath, and charges at Noor again with a barrage of strikes. Noor somehow blocks all of them with the flat side of his sword and pushes Gojo back once more. Gojo isn't enjoying the situation and declares that now he'll go all out, threatening to kill Noor as well if he doesn't hand over the boy. Noor prepares himself, unwilling to give Rollo up. Gojo rushes at Noor with surprising speed, so fast that Noor barely manages to parry the attack. The force of the strike is so powerful that Noor is pushed back, and the shockwave knocks Rollo to the ground. Noor wonders how such a skinny guy could hit harder than a cow. Meanwhile, Gojo notices that his knife is broken again. Not skipping a beat, he grabs another knife and charges at Noor once more, raining a fiery storm of strikes. Noor gets pushed back with every hit and realizes he's fighting purely on instinct. Gojo is impressed by Noor's tenacity, especially his ability to survive such deadly hits. Lin notices that the blindfolded man's attacks are getting more intense with each strike. But Ines steps in front of her, raising a barrier and telling her to stay back as this could become very dangerous. Ines informs Lin that there's only one person she knows who wears such an odd outfit, and that person is Dead Man Zadu, a former S-ranked adventurer. Ines recalls learning about Zadu from the schoolmasters when she came across his name in a book of ongoing cases. He was declared dead some time ago, but clearly, that wasn't the case. One of the masters explained that Zadu became an S-ranked adventurer at a young age, but because of his wicked nature, he soon became an S-ranked fugitive. Gil seemed intrigued and asked if he could take the job of hunting this man down. The blue-haired master, who had taught Gil how to fight, shared that Zadu didn't always use his powers for good, and at one point, he killed 36 members of a single family over a trivial dispute. This incident caused many people to call for his adventure card to be revoked. The master also revealed that Zadu once took jobs only for money, no matter the task, even going so far as to destroy an entire kingdom and massacre the royal family like they were nothing more than low-level goblins. Back in the present, Zadu keeps attacking Noor, growing increasingly surprised by his resilience. Noor feels bad about breaking Zadu's blades and tells him he didn't mean to do so, promising to repay him. Zadu finds this amusing but decides to end things here and now. He throws his broken cross into the air, which starts glowing red and transforms into 1,000 sharp metallic stakes. Noor realizes he won't be able to block them all but does his best to parry most of them. Some still manage to get through, stabbing him in the back. Ines sees that Noor won't last much longer like this and decides to step in, launching ethereal shields at Zadu, giving Noor the chance to parry another wave of stakes. As Noor covers Rollo to protect him, Ines's shields block the rest of the stakes. Noor thanks her for the help, and Ines goes on the offensive, launching her shields at Zadu. But Zadu is surprisingly agile, effortlessly dodging each attack with expert movements. Ines continues defending against Zadu's crosses and tells Noor that they need to break this stalemate. She suggests that Noor focus on attacking while she handles the defense. Noor, unsure of how to lead an attack, realizes there are broken dragon claws scattered on the ground. He tells Ines to drop her shields when he gives the signal, then grabs a handful of small claw pieces. Using his strength-enhancing spells, Noor hurls the claw pieces at Zadu's stakes, successfully destroying many of them. However, Zadu takes this opportunity to launch a sneak attack on Ines, almost succeeding. But Noor's incredible parry saves her, though it comes at the cost of another broken blade. Zadu considers whether it's wise to continue fighting this strange man who keeps blocking his strikes. He attempts one last sneak attack, but Noor parries it yet again. Zato finally says he's had enough for the day and decides to leave, claiming that as long as Nor is with Rollo, he can't do much. With that, he vanishes in a cloud of smoke. Everyone breathes a sigh of relief and began to think of returning to the royal capital. Although Rollo is too scared to speak. He asks Nor if he's from the capital city and warns them that it's going to be a massacre. Rollo explains that he overheard people talking about a giant black dragon, much stronger than the one they just fought, being set loose on the city to cause destruction. Lin is horrified and insists to Ines that they need to return, but Ines says they can't. Rain ordered her to keep Lin safe. However, Lin argues that there's no safety if the capital falls, and with Nor, they might still have a chance to defend it. Nor doesn't quite grasp the seriousness of the situation but agrees to head back to the city. Meanwhile, in the capital, Rain surveys the damage done to the town. A soldier reports that they've managed to repel most of the enemy forces, thanks to the 6 schoolmasters. However, the spies are still searching for hidden enemies but can't seem to find any. Rain wonders where the next attack will come from and suddenly looks up at the sky. The soldier assures him that the hunters didn't spot any aerial threats, which eases Rain's worry slightly, until he notices something strange in the sky. Using his magic to get a clearer view, Rain is shocked to see a massive black dragon, a creature powerful enough to destroy the entire kingdom on its own. On their way back to the city, Nor reflects on the story his father once told him about the giant dragon of Calamity, one of the most dangerous creatures alive. His father had recounted how an adventurer became a hero by slaying the beast and saving the world from destruction. Nor had always wanted to be a hero too, but his thoughts are interrupted when he senses something off. Lin looks outside, seeing nothing at first. But soon, the barrier around the city breaks, and terror grips her as she spots the enormous black dragon of Calamity heading straight for the city. The townspeople watch in horror as the dragon's shadow engulfs the entire city. Rain stands frozen in fear, unable to believe the dragon is already upon them. He asks the commander how it could attack, given that it had only gone to sleep 15 years ago and should have remained dormant for much longer. The commander, trembling, replies that the enemy kingdom must have intentionally awakened the beast. Rain can't believe someone would unleash such a destructive force over a mere conflict, but he quickly realizes that they need to evacuate the city immediately. The headmasters are equally stunned by the dragon's appearance, but they also notice that someone has sealed off all the exits with mana, preventing any escape. As more monsters emerge, the headmasters are forced to fight them off. Back in the countryside, Ines seems resigned to defeat, claiming that there's nothing they can do now. But Nor is just excited to see a dragon up close for the first time, much to everyone's shock. They wonder if this fool realizes he just fought and defeated a dragon. Nor remains unfazed and suggests that if Lin uses her wind blast on him, he might be able to reach the city quickly enough to help. Lin is taken aback by Nor's determination, but she agrees. Back inside the city, the king walks up to the tower, thinking about the threat that the enemy king made about having enough power to destroy him easily if he didn't give up the privileges of the lost dungeon. But the king decided to refuse their requests and now blames himself for all this death and destruction. He walks over with a sword ready in his hand to face the results of his foolishness and decides to do as much damage as he can to the dragon before he dies. Back in the countryside, Nor puts his plan into action as he stands in front of Ines's cylindrical shield, which can concentrate Lin's magic. They all get ready as Lin supersets multiple enchantments at once, producing her strongest wind blast ever, which shoots Nor into the sky like Team Rocket, and he disappears into the sky. Back at the tower, the king braces himself for the end as the dragon starts charging up a colossal attack, which leaves him completely stunned. On the ground, everyone realizes that the dragon is powering up its most destructive beam, which had once wiped out an entire continent. The king stands resolutely and draws a special golden dagger, preparing for a decisive strike. The headmasters watch with bated breath, understanding that the king is channeling all his life force into this one attack, hoping to injure the dragon as much as possible. Before their intense duel can truly begin, Nor accidentally hits the dragon with such force that it sends the dragon's beam shooting into the sky and the dragon crashing down to the ground. The king is left in utter shock. As the dust settles, the enraged dragon rises and tries to crush Nor with its tail, but Nor manages to block the attack. The dragon's tail flattens any houses unfortunate enough to be in its way. The dragon, stunned by this, decides to strike again, but this time Nor parries the attack with full force, knocking the dragon into the dirt. Nor recalls how the wind blast had knocked him out for a moment, but he had managed to recover and use the momentum to leap to the city walls. He narrowly avoids crashing into the dragon thanks to his sword, which blocks the blow and saves his life. By the time the dragon gets back up, Ines and Lin are running through the city, trying to assist the survivors. They are attacked by boulders thrown by goblin kings. Although these goblins aren't as massive as the one Lin and Nor faced in the forest, they are still incredibly strong. Lin, recalling Nor's advice that they are just goblins, starts shooting ice spears at them. The spears barely scratch the goblins as they charge towards her. Ines fortifies their defenses, and just as the goblins are about to attack, the demon boy uses his special powers to halt their advance. Lin then uses an ice blast to freeze them, while Ines creates an ethereal sword and slices them to pieces. Lin is amazed by the demon boy's abilities, realizing that demon folk must possess incredible magical powers if a boy can stop 3 goblin kings. Lin then turns her attention back to the dragon, which continues to attack Nor with its claws. Despite the dragon's relentless assault, Nor parries each attack, continuously injuring the dragon's claws and scales. The dragon is astonished to be injured for the first time, while Nor is intrigued by the sword's durability. He realizes that as long as he wields this sword, the dragon cannot defeat him. However, the dragon has other plans. It takes to the sky, out of reach, and starts charging another massive death ray aimed at annihilating the continent. The king realizes their situation is dire and watches as the dragon fires the beam at the ground. Miraculously, Nor manages to parry the attack once more, redirecting the beam into the sky where it explodes in a massive fireball, enough to devastate half the world. The dragon descends back to Earth, infuriated and baffled by how this human keeps blocking its attacks. In a final act of rage, the dragon tries to scratch Nor again. Nor calmly parries the hit as before, causing the dragon's claw to break and fall to the ground. Everyone watches in amazement as the dragon collapses in front of Nor, its eyes changing from fiery red to a normal color. Rain and the others, who were evacuating people, are awestruck, wondering how a single man could subdue a dragon. Nor reflects on the story his father told him about a hero who beheaded a dragon and brought peace to the land. He contemplates whether he should fulfill his childhood dream of becoming a hero by slaying the dragon for fame and fortune or let that dream remain just a dream. After much thought, he sits down with his sword by his side, smiling at the dragon. He decides he cannot become a dragon-slaying hero and that his dream should stay a dream, so he can continue his journey to become a better human and one of the strongest fighters ever. Lin snaps out of her shock and rushes to Nor, asking if he is okay. Nor turns around and waves joyfully, declaring that everything is under control. Everyone looks at Nor in awe as he reassures them he is fine and then thanks Rollo for saving the day. Rollo is puzzled and asks what Nor means. Nor mistakenly believes Rollo mind-controlled the dragon, saving him from certain death. Rollo denies it, which confuses Nor, since he felt the dragon's will to fight diminish. Nor concludes that Rollo must be afraid of being seen as dangerous for controlling the dragon and doesn't want to take responsibility. Nor smiles and winks at Rollo, suggesting they deal with the dragon by having Rollo control its mind again and send it back to where it came from. Ines is shocked and argues that the dragon tried to destroy the continent. Nor agrees but prefers not to kill the dragon if possible. Lin decides to support Nor's wishes since he defeated the beast and turns to Rollo to handle the dragon. Rollo, though hesitant, agrees and uses his powers to command the dragon. The dragon, now under Nor's command, agrees to follow orders and takes to the air, briefly appearing as a bad CGI effect before flying away. As the dragon flies off, a bright pink light shoots toward it, incinerating it into a burning pile of flesh. Nor is stunned, wondering who could have done this. It turns out that this was done by the enemy king, who is armored and ready with an army of his own, filled with soldiers wielding all kinds of weapons including heavy-duty artillery, straight from the land of freedom. The king is pleased with his strategic prowess and magical weapons, including a rail gun capable of destroying even the mightiest creatures. He believes the dragon has already devastated the kingdom, and plans to claim credit for its defeat. The king spots people on a nearby hill examining the supposed dragon corpse. He recognizes Lin as the princess and Ines as the legendary warrior and realizes she might be the reason the city isn't in ruins. He decides to deal with Ines right there and then, ordering the railgun to fire at Nor and his party. Ines sees the incoming purple light beam and knows she can't dodge it. Thankfully, Nor once again comes to the rescue, blocking and deflecting the beam. The king is shocked to see Nor still alive and demands to know what went wrong. The soldiers apologize, thinking they misfired. Nor is puzzled by the sudden attack and the soldiers' preparations. Ines reveals the truth. Their kingdom is at war with the enemy kingdom of Derek and can't withstand 10,000 soldiers. Lin suggests they retreat and regroup with her brother Ray before deciding their next move. Noor agrees, but before they can leave, another volley of attacks comes their way. This time, Ines is prepared and creates shields to block all the incoming hits. Noor realizes that if the attacks keep coming, they won't be able to move. He devises a plan to distract the enemies while the others escape. Although he's not very confident in his fighting abilities, he knows he excels at running away, a skill he's perfected since childhood. He recalls how, when he tried to gather honey, he would always irritate the bees, who would then swarm him, forcing him to flee daily. Compared to that, this army should be much slower, giving him confidence in his chances to escape. Unfortunately, Lin misunderstands his intentions and thinks Noor is so confident in his strength that he wants to confront the army head-on. She approaches him from behind and tells him to get ready. Noor is confused, thinking she might want to cast defensive spells on him. He quickly realizes she's preparing to launch him directly into the enemy ranks. He tries to stop her, but Rollo interrupts, announcing that they are firing the railgun again. The timing couldn't be worse. Before Noor can protest, Lin unleashes one of her strongest wind blasts, propelling him into the air at incredible speed. Noor tries to regain his balance and figure out how to escape, but the laser beams from the railgun start raining down on him. He closes his eyes, swings his sword, and discovers he can easily parry the beams. That's all he needs. He starts parrying the blasts while falling back to the ground, maintaining his speed and dodging any attacks coming his way. Noor realizes that his speed is too high to change direction, leaving him no choice but to confront the enemies head-on. The soldiers are stunned to see this madman charging at them. They draw their weapons, but Noor immediately uses his parry technique, disarming thousands of them in one sweep, followed by another parry that disarms anyone else in his path. He continues to parry and run through the enemy ranks, leaving the king astonished and wondering what on earth is happening. The king watches as Noor jumps towards them and starts dealing with the remaining soldiers. Disarmed swords fall to the ground, injuring any soldier unfortunate enough to be hit. This is followed by a barrage of shields that crushes the remaining soldiers. The king is in disbelief as artillery starts falling around him while the remaining soldiers stand confused. Noor manages to disarm and incapacitate every soldier in the enemy king's army before rushing towards the king himself. The king is horrified, wondering what kind of monster this man is. As Noor approaches, breathing heavily, the king is terrified, thinking that Noor is coming towards him to end his filthy disgusting life while pissing his pants. He remembers that he still has his fancy sword and draws it, but Noor ignores him, just like his ex used to ignore him, and continues destroying the remaining rail guns. The king is traumatized, watching as his marvelous machines from Uncle Sam are reduced to ruins on the ground. Finally, Noor stands before the king with his sword on the ground. The king recalls seeing a similar sword in the throne room during a past visit to this kingdom and wonders why this man is holding the sword that King Clay once wielded. Even King Clay had to use both hands to handle the sword, but this monster has used it with one hand to defeat his entire army single-handedly. This realization causes the enemy king to give himself a golden shower once again, after which he flees to his horse and rushes off, wondering if Noor will pursue him.
The story will be continued in future videos. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.